And now, Legal Perspective with Nick Clekis.
The holidays can be a joyful time, but for families navigating custody and divorce, things can quickly get tangled in the tinsel. Here to help untangle the season is Nick Clekis, owner of Clekis Law Firm. Nick, great to have you here with us today.
Thanks for having me.
So when we're talking about divorce in South Carolina, I know there's different ways. How would someone determine the best approach, the best way to get divorced?
Well, it depends what you have going on. So there are fault grounds and there's no fault. And fault grounds typically is adultery, habitual intoxication, or physical abuse. And if you have fault grounds and you file, theoretically you could be divorced in 90 days. It never happens that quick, but that's what the statute says. No fault is 1 year continuous separation. And we are one of the most antiquated states with that kind of delay in allowing you to get divorced. Some states, it's 30 days.
Yeah.
But 1 year continuous separation with no cohabitation, and you can get divorced on no fault grounds.
Okay. How does South Carolina handle dividing property?
So there's equitable distribution states and community property states. California is a community property state. You get divorced, you get half. South Carolina is an equitable distribution state. Well, what does that mean? You equitably or fairly divide the marital estate. So you identify what's marital property and you equitably divide assets and debts. Mm-hmm. Not everything's marital property, and it's not always 50-50. It could be 60-40, 70-30, whatever, depending on health and age of the parties, contribution to the marriage, what you may have come into the marriage with. Mm-hmm. You also have things that can get transmuted into marital property.
Okay. So when you say things that you come into the marriage with, so let's say I have a furniture set and I had it before we got married and then break up, is that still my furniture set or do I have to share it?
Yes and no. So, if you get married and you get divorced the next day, you take your furniture. But if you sit on that furniture for 5 or 10 years or use the TV for 5 or 10 years or whatever it may be, it gets transmuted into marital property because it becomes use of the marital estate.
Okay, so like if we bought the furniture set together, then that would become transmittable property.
It transmutes into marital property, and same can really even happen with real estate. So let's say you own a house, and your fiance, now husband, moves in, and he moves out right away. Nothing. But let's say he's there for 10, 20 years and he's helped paying the mortgage and he's added a room and he's made improvements. He eventually builds equity in that house and you get divorced, and a portion of that equity in your house becomes marital property subject to equitable distribution.
What role does inheritance have in this?
Commingling of funds. So if you inherit a bunch of money, grandma dies, you get $10 million, and you put it in the joint account, he gets half. Wow. So if you keep it separate in a separate account, you can still use it for marital purposes to the extent that you say, hey, I want to go buy a new car for us or something like that. But so long as you don't commingle those funds with the marital assets, you should be okay that if you get divorced, assuming you don't have a prenup.
Mm-hmm. And now, okay, speaking of prenup, how do they work and why would someone need a prenup or want a prenup?
Well, that is a double-edged sword. So a prenup can work. Traditionally, everybody thinks it's to protect somebody who has a lot of money from having to give any money to the spouse that's leaving, that's coming into the marriage with no assets. But it can also be written so that the spouse with less assets coming into the marriage is guaranteed some assets when she leaves or he leaves the marriage, so that, oftentimes it could be an age disparity. You got Anna Nicole Smith married that guy that was way older than her, whatever. Mm-hmm. It may be a situation where, look, I'll go ahead and make this business relationship with you and get married, but in the event of our divorce, I don't want to be left with nothing. And so they write the agreement, and they can also be referred to as postnuptial.
Okay. Before we let you go, I do have to ask you, in South Carolina, how is custody decided?
Well, the family courts always make decisions based on what's in the best interest of the children. So if you have one fit parent and one unfit parent, the fit parent's going to have priority. Mm-hmm. If both parents are fit, then it becomes a little more difficult. You can have anything from joint custody to standard visitation. Standard visitation being every other weekend, from Friday at 6 to Sunday at 6, maybe a Wednesday night in between, 2 weeks in the summer, blah, blah, blah. Joint custody, it can be open and liberal, and just decide between yourselves, when you want to share the child.
Okay, absolutely. For any legal advice, 843-9000000, Clekis.com. Nick, thank you for being here as always, and make sure you tune in next Tuesday for our next Legal Perspective. We're back in 2 minutes.
This has been Legal Perspective with Nick Clekis.